Hello, A Taste of AZ listeners. We are here today for part 2 of our 100th episode of A Taste of AZ podcast. And as part of that celebration, we are meeting up with some of our writers. Today we are with Marci, just to kind of reflect on the projects that we've done together, other A Taste of AZ things. So how are you doing today, Marci?
I'm doing great. How are you all?
Doing very well. I'm a little jealous of you. You've been traveling all around the world, or not the world, I guess.
The States, yeah. This summer was the States. I was in 13 states over the last 2 months with our kids, kind of road tripping.
13 over 2 months?
Yes.
Wow.
That's
crazy.
A lot.
It's a lot.
And you were doing a lot of fun food and beverage stuff while you were on your journey, I assume.
Yes, I try to.
Did you miss Arizona? Did you miss certain spots in the valley while you were gone?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Anything come to mind if I put you on the spot?
Oh, just my bed. I missed my bed.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Nope, that's
and my
the right
dog.
answer. Yeah, absolutely.
That was the right answer. Yeah, he was setting you up for a trick question. So
Exactly. Well, so as I said, we're here to kind of reflect on the past, few years of working with you. I think your first article was in the second or the third issue. Do you remember?
It was the second. I did the Chula
That's right.
Seafood article.
yes.
One of the most popular, beloved articles for sure.
Articles, places.
Yeah.
They actually put in the new Chula up by me. So kind of another full circle moment that we're probably going to have several today of.
Yeah, they talked about it in the interview. They were talking about
really?
how they were planning on opening that because they would like to expand. They're getting so many requests from all over the valley. And that was their next step, was up in North Scottsdale. So we'll be interested to see where they go next,
Well, and when Eric and I were in back in, what was it, maybe November of last year, I don't know if they were finishing it up or working on it. I think they were working on the extension to their Uptown location where they added a bar and introduced their whole cocktail program.
Yep.
And then it was in August, I believe, of this year, just like a month ago, that they opened their Uptown location, which is a fantastic spot. Have either of you been yet?
Or Greyhawk.
Greyhawk.
Greyhawk,
yeah,
no.
correct.
No, I'll have to check it out.
It's really cool.
I haven't
You were
been
there
here.
Luke was there opening day. He was
Nice.
waiting outside.
I was,
actually.
He had a tent outside, yeah.
I was there opening day, and I've already brought some family to go there and enjoy it, and they were blown away. Such a great spot. The first time I went in, I had the grilled oysters and the Hawaiian poke bowl, I think it was.
Okay.
And then this last time I got the burrito. Man, that burrito is
I
insane.
can't not get the burrito.
It's so good.
I had the Hatch chili tuna melt because they're always like, dude, you got to try this. I'm like, all right. And so finally I tried it. I'm like, it was good. I'm getting the burrito next time.
Yeah.
Have y'all had the swordfish cubano? I love that.
No.
It's really good. That's kind of one of their signature.
I don't know how we
dishes,
haven't
yeah.
tried that.
That'll be the next one I look past to get the burrito, I think.
Yeah.
No, I'm just
Eric's like, should I listen to Marci? No, burrito all day.
Yeah,
all
there
day.
you go.
Have you had the burrito?
I haven't.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah, that's what I'll get next time.
Yeah.
And you're a big fan of Mexican food, right?
I am.
I know
yes.
it's kind of like an Americanized Mexican dish, but it's still fantastic.
It is
for sure.
Yeah. No.
And I believe their chef is Hispanic now.
Juan, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and he was in Christina's book, Phoenix Cooks, and so
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten to see a variety of not only his cooking, but then the Chula pop-up at Vanilla Gorilla that was crazy. They have like
that's
the scallop
right.
sausage.
Yeah, that's right.
That was one of a kind.
Yeah,
So
Chula.
I guess when you think back on that article, you had obviously written for other publications before, done this kind of work before. Was there anything about that story that stood out?
There were so many things about that story, I think, that stood out. I mean, I loved the fact that they started buying swordfish on the docks in San Diego and driving it here to sell in farmers markets.
Yeah.
And from that, they've grown into where they are today. Is just really incredible. And it just goes to show like they felt there was a need here for, rather a big market that people would come and buy it. And they were right.
Sure.
Like it's a big gamble. I mean, every time you just say, I think that this is what people want. And then you go through those lengths to provide it. And then you see it come true. It's really incredible. It's really a beautiful story.
Well, people make the joke about, seafood in Arizona. That's got to be great. But I'm like, you can go to Chula. It's pretty bomb.
Yeah.
For sure. And if you've had like, oh man, I had this really good something at, this restaurant, that's probably Chula's.
It probably was, yeah.
I like this. I dig this story because it's those different components of, John and his family coming from San Diego and being like the fisherman,
Right,
like knowing
exactly.
that trade.
Yeah.
And then his wife, Mandy, understanding the business side of it, like there's a huge opportunity. And then you bring in Hogan with his pedigree behind, Fox Restaurant of like, all right, man, I know how to run this. So
Yeah.
I think it's really cool when we did that podcast and then through your article was to kind of highlight the moving parts to that.
Sure.
Yeah, it's not just one person with this idea and here's what we're going to do. It's like all these, like with one of those pieces missing, they probably might not have been able to do it.
And I love their commitment to sustainability and how
Yeah.
they're constantly pushing people to ask where their food is coming from, where their seafood is coming from.
Yeah.
And since then, I've written a lot about that topic. And
Oh, really?
I find myself even questioning it when I go places, when I'm out ordering food. Do you know where this fish comes from? And it's a really important topic because, of the health of our oceans and the future of the fish population. So
There is a documentary on Netflix, I forget the name of it, but that went wildly popular during the middle of COVID, and it was basically painting all fishing out to be just like the dragging of the huge nets across the ocean floor, and at no point do they talk about, sustainable fishing the way that Chula described it, and I'm like, of course, most of the fish that is sold in the world is probably not captured that way.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point of educating people about those types of things, because would you rather someone not know it all, or would you rather someone be asking that question of, hey, where is this source from?
Yeah.
Because if we just removed fish from food across the world, I think that would lead a lot of people to go hungry. So there's
absolutely.
a right way to do it.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what the cool thing, just to one more piece on that, is that was a cool thing. And I think it was John specifically talking about, he kept mentioning farmed fish or something. And we were, your mind is automatically like, oh, that's not
Bad,
good.
yeah.
But he's like, no.
it's
that's
important.
Not,
Like that's the future. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So it's interesting to, you hear people that don't know anything what they're talking about saying. I'm like, I heard it from a guy who knows what he's talking about, and plus that California burrito. So anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you can eat a burrito like that and know that you're kind of eating not only high quality fish that's going to taste good, but fish that's been treated right and harvested, if you will, with reverence, that's big. And then when you can pair it with a Purpose Pilsner or another local beer, maybe church music, or I think Hazing, Arizona is what I saw last time I was in there.
Yep.
It doesn't really get much better than that.
No.
So before we move on from Chula, is there any other thing you wanted to add?
No, I think we covered a lot there.
Yeah. I think probably one of my favorite parts of that story is that Hogan and John were not friends in high school, and now they run a business together.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's
that's
right.
true.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
So what was the article you did, the issue after that? I think it was Perryland and Cattle, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you
Another one of my favorites.
you kind of took a gamble on me because I came to you with that story, and I said
That kind of sealed the
Yeah.
deal. You came to me with that, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome.
Oh,
Yeah.
both him and I were like, hell yeah.
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 yeah. So I think I found them on Instagram, and it was around Christmas time, and they were advertising prime rib for Christmas dinner. So I picked up this prime rib from them, and it was massive, but it was so beautifully packaged, and they gave me their family recipe with the rub to use and exactly how to cook it. And we made this prime rib that, I kid you not, was like this big.
Wow. You can always
And-
invite me and Eric
Oh,
over if that happens
absolutely.
again.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We called it the roast beast, and it was the most incredible prime rib I've ever had in my life. And so that's when I was like, this story has to get out. And so I came to you and pitched that deal, and that was a really interesting story.
I'm hung up on the nickname that you gave it. And it's funny because someone asked Eric what his nickname was recently. And I think your nickname is now the Roast Beast.
Roast beast. I'll take it. As long as it gets me some food. As long as you associate me with food, I'm good with that.
Well, it's funny. You mentioned that you had found Perryland and Cattle on Instagram. And that's actually where I found you. I was just scrolling through Instagram looking for creators, writers, photographers, people that could kind of help us build up a Taste of AZ and contribute awesome ideas for content. And I had seen that you'd done some cool stuff before and that your photos were good and all that, but when you sent that pitch, I'm like, oh, this is exactly what we're going for.
For sure.
Because it wasn't just, here's some cattle rancher that you can't find their products. It is a little bit more of a niche product, right? Of course it is, and it's at a smaller scale, but let's say you're in Four Peaks. I don't know if they still have the Drunken Cow Burger. I sure hope they do. Yeah. But that was Perryland and Cattle Beef that was on the menu. I believe they had stuff at Tarbell's before. And so if you read an article about Tarbell and then you read something like that and go in and have the connection of this beef on his menu, that to me is one of like the coolest food and beverage experiences that you can get. It's almost like creating your own tasting menu in the sense where it's not a tasting menu, but you're creating a story behind what you're eating.
Yeah.
Maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally.
Yeah.
Do you remember the name of the beer byproduct that they feed the cattle?
It's the wort.
Yes.
Is it? Because I thought they
so.
said there was it's beyond. I think it was brewed or something.
I'm not sure. Well, it was definitely liquid.
Yeah.
And it didn't have alcohol in it. So
Right.
I think it had a small amount of alcohol in it. We got to revisit that one because
Yeah.
I was thrown because I thought it from the beginning. I just assumed it was wort, but it's not.
okay.
Like it's something that's a little bit different.
well, like I don't know.
Almost
Because I've
like
been in
dumped
enough
beer.
breweries to see stuff dumped on the floor.
Yeah.
But not been in a brewery thoughtful enough to ask what is that versus that. Because you see yeast on the floor, you see some sort of brewing byproduct on the floor, but I don't know what exactly.
I'm going to give a
it would be.
challenge to our listeners. Go back and listen to that episode.
Yes.
Because we asked them, I think, right, specifically in the episode. So if you listen, email me, Eric at tasteofaz.com,
Yeah.
and tell me what it is, and we'll give you something
I love
special.
the whole full circle nature of that story and how they feed this byproduct to the cattle, and then the cattle's beef is then served. Well, it was Four Peaks that they were taking the byproduct, and then Four Peaks was serving this burger made from their cattle. So
and it runs even
very
deeper
cool.
than that when you want to connect that full circle because they have their composting
Their
program,
composting was very cool.
which maybe you want to speak to that.
I would defer to you.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was running around taking photos.
She was
and-
zoned in. She was zoned in for sure. We were all avoiding the wind because remember it was windy and
Yeah,
dusty.
it was a
and
wild
dusty,
day.
Yeah.
And at a composting site, it
Yeah,
has
for sure.
a unique environment.
For sure.
But basically, it's this spot out in, I don't know, we'll call it Gilbert area. Just
Southeast Valley, basically.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you can bring your leftover like gardening material or let's say your commercial landscaper, you can bring the stuff there and drop it off and they will actually process that into compost as
Old
opposed
pallets
to
and stuff like that too.
yeah, really anything that can be composted. But I think they specifically targeted the waste from their farm sites and then other people doing agricultural stuff.
Yeah.
Instead of putting that into a landfill where all that organic material and energy and just good stuff is going to go to die forever and never be repurposed. So then they take that compost, put it on their fields where they grow grain, which they then feed to the cattle that later get some of the wort for an extra or whatever it was for extra nutrient boost.
Yeah.
And then after that, the beef is served on Four Peaks menu and then available on their website, which is pretty crazy. I've never heard of
really
anything
cool.
like that.
Yeah,
No.
no, that is very cool.
It reminds me very much of kind of the things that not Mark Tarbell, I was going to say Mark Ryan. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Farmer
Yeah.
Mark of Riba Farms,
Yeah.
who you have an upcoming article about as
Right.
well.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
and the regenerative agriculture piece.
Which I think-
loved talking to him about that.
Yeah, Arizona and
Yeah.
people like them, both of them, are really embracing those kinds of things. You've seen that firsthand through your articles.
Yes, definitely.
What was it like visiting Riba Farms? Was it crazy
I
when
haven't
you were there?
gone yet.
Oh,
no.
that's right.
Yeah, I was
Have you
waiting
been
till
there?
the fall. I have not.
Okay.
I have not. No.
It's a beautiful. You're
Yeah.
going to enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. When I spoke to him, it was early August.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm trying to think of what the best time of year would be to go, but it's different every time we've ever been.
It is.
Yeah, he just said there was more activity in the fall,
Okay.
fall, winter, and spring.
For sure.
And so,
yeah, which is great because I don't want to go there in the summer. Yeah.
No, absolutely not.
Hey,
We shot.
I was going to say one real quick thing I want to say. I wanted to bring this up at the composting site. It blew me away when we found that big pile of shredded money. Do you remember that?
That's right.
Shredded
yeah.
cash.
Yeah,
Like,
that's right.
Looked like, to me, in my eyes, it was like $100 million shredded.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I was going to piece it together. But
The whole pile was shredded cash in your
shredded
mind.
cash.
That's right.
There was a lot though, and they had told us like because it's mainly cotton that it's like it's organic material, so they
right.
just shred it to
Yeah.
So I still have that at home in a bag. I'm gonna put
It's
it
money
together
that the
one day.
banks have taken out of circulation.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
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 And Eric's over there like taping bills
Yeah.
together. He's like, no one's gonna know.
For makeup to make like a $1 bill. But anyway, so the Mark Ryan regenerative stuff.
Yes. Well, let's actually revisit that as we kind of go chronologically. Do you recall the first podcast you joined us on?
Yes. It was
Was it Alex Stratta?
It was Alex Stratta.
I feel like there might have been one before that. Are you sure that's the first one?
Yes,
Okay.
because I remember how nervous I was.
Okay, yeah.
I remember
And
specifically.
I remember how comfortable he was in telling his story,
Sure.
and you got deep with him. Like, I was kind of blown away.
I tend to do that.
Yeah, that was
But
it was really cool.
if they go along with, right? Sometimes
Sure.
they
Yeah.
love that. Like they'll let you know what they want to share. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's this like just rock star chef, and I was just, I mean, I was so nervous around him and then in front of the microphone, and that was very pivotal experience for me, definitely.
Well, before we were talking on the podcast recording, you had mentioned, you know, like, do you see progression? Or you said you must see progression, and I do. But it's almost like doing this, talking to people, doing that kind of interview brings out a confidence in you that you don't even really notice it building, because you just get better at talking to people
Yeah.
and listening as well.
Yeah.
Because that's really what a podcast
Listening
host
is a
should do
big
the
piece
most.
of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I get it.
I got to say on that one, I was just glad you were there, because with his background in France and Europe and whatnot, Marci was pronouncing words that I don't think I could read off of a piece of paper, even like mispronouncing.
Yeah.
And I think he really appreciated that. And, you know, that's just something that I don't really bring to the table, A, because I've not traveled the world, but B, you just have a deep level of exposure to these things and knowledge and passion for the industry that it's kind of
you.
trying to think of the best way to describe it, but it's like a knowledge that you don't like outwardly force on other people. You're not trying to show off, but people will bring up names and you'll be like, oh yeah, and they did this and that, and I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Good to know that my major in French
That's
has
right.
come
Yeah.
to good use.
I remember you
knew
saying
I'd find
that
a
now.
spot for it. Yeah.
You should start the first French podcast. Well, I'm sure there's other French podcasts, but
Hear that,
we're going to call
France?
it the first one. Yeah, no podcast in France. Marci's going to
You're
be the
welcome
first.
for
There you
that
go.
idea, France. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was an epic podcast too, because, you know, of course I knew some of his background, but hearing him talk through it and kind of, you know, that was one of the first times where I realized how interwoven the food and beverage industry is, like on a very, very deep level. It's that way. And, you know, interviewing people like him, I'm sure you would agree, is an incredible experience,
Oh,
because rarely do people get, you know, an hour to sit down and talk with someone of that level of achievement just to talk about what they've done over their life.
Yeah.
Was that the first time you've ever done something like that, huh?
Yeah.
Did you, like, when you look back on it, are you glad that you kind of bit the bullet and jumped on it?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
And you were so encouraging. You were saying, you can do this, it'll be fine. You know, you just sit down and you just talk.
Well,
Remember that?
So I
good
imagine
advice,
that was
too.
done after the Perryland and Cattle article. And I remember when we were doing the whole Perryland and Cattle thing, I thought you were doing a killer job asking questions. You were like interviewing as we're walking around and stuff. And I'm like, oh, she's like a legitimate reporter over here. Eric and I are just like looking at the fake money, and we're like giggling like
Stuff in my
cavemen.
pockets, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But when we were at Old Ellsworth after having a bite with the people from Perryland, just the questions you were asking and the depth you were going to, I'm like, this is the kind of article that I personally like to read. And so, you know, to see you continue to knock out articles like that can take these complex stories like regenerative agriculture at Riba Farms and kind of break open that nutshell and make it palatable, so to speak. That's
Sure.
one of the reasons why I feel so lucky that we were able to get you on board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
How did you develop that writing style?
I don't know. I think it's just I love to tell stories. I love to hear people's stories and get it out. I just I think that's probably the bottom line. I mean, if someone's telling me their history or their story, and I just can already see it kind of forming in my mind, like, oh my gosh, this has got to get out. People have got to hear about this. And
Yeah.
I think everybody has an interesting story to tell.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people think, no, I don't really have an interesting, but they do. You know.
Or they don't know how to tell it.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're just. Yeah. Yeah. And
Well,
we-
because, you know, you could go to that compost site and it doesn't look like anything special. It kind of looks like piles of garbage.
Yeah.
But if you're able to draw out all the other reasons why that's happening and draw the story out of it, that's obviously a skill that you develop as a writer. How did you get into food writing?
That's a long story.
We've got some time
You have
for
time
it.
for that one?
We've got time. We've got lots of mezcal, so let's
Okay.
crack one open.
All right. It would have to go back to, I got into blogging. First, I started as a blogger. And my mother had passed away. And she was a big force in my life, as my father. But my mother and I shared a great love of food and travel. And we would always exchange stories about the places we'd go. And she would always show me photos of her food. And even if it was, one of those just little disposable cameras, which is that was pretty much like the extent of her knowledge of working a camera.
Yeah.
But she would say, oh, I went and I did look at this beautiful dish. And she was also so very brave. Like I remember once when we went to Thomas Keller's restaurant in Napa, and she bought all of his cookbooks, the French Laundry, and she insisted that he sign. She bought them for she bought 20. She insisted that he sign each and every one of them.
Really?
And I remember the wait staff was like, no, he's a little bit too busy. He can't do that. And she was just adamant. And I've always admired her tenacity. Yeah. So she had passed away. And I remember going on a trip, it was about a year later with my husband. We went to Sedona, and we went hiking, and we went to Elote, and we were eating on the, Elote used to have this little outdoor area, and we were eating out there. And I remember looking around and thinking, my mom would love this. And at the time, my nieces were blogging, and I thought to myself, they're blogging. This can't be too hard. I'm just going to. So I wrote a blog about our trip to Sedona, and I just kind of threw it out there. Like I knew nothing really about starting a website or anything. I literally just got it out there, and it was a way for me to keep up that conversation with my mom in a way.
I like that.
And is this the same website that you have to this day?
It is, yes.
It's TexAZTaste.com,
yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
And that is because you've traveled to Texas a lot as well, right?
I grew up there, so
Okay.
I felt that I was trying to think of an interesting name. I'm not too very clever, but
I think it's a pretty good one.
I like
I
it.
just
I
felt
like it.
that I felt that you didn't really know me unless you knew the Texas side of me. And also I felt like taste, it connotes a lot of things. Like you can taste a drink or a dish, or you can have certain taste. And so I wanted it to encompass a lot.
Yeah.
And so what was that like growing up in Texas? I imagine there are some similarities to Arizona.
There are a few. There definitely are a few. I grew up in South Texas, so Texas is quite large. And I would say each town has its own distinct personality. So San Antonio has a very different personality than Dallas or Houston or Austin, even though Austin's an hour away. And San Antonio is a military town. My dad was in the Army.
Right.
So that's where my parents had met. He was stationed in San Antonio. And after he retired, we moved back there. I was actually born in Colorado. Shh, don't tell anyone.
That's hard to add into that
yes,
name, huh?
Exactly. And we moved to San Antonio when I was 6. And it really formed, growing up there really formed who I am. So San Antonio's a beautiful city. It was part of Mexico for many, many years. The culture is very, very Mexican. People, 60% Hispanic is of population. You grow up speaking Spanish.
Do you have Hispanic heritage?
I do not.
Okay.
I do not have it.
Because I've noticed you can enunciate Spanish words and whatnot very well. So I was never sure. And obviously you know a lot about Hispanic culture growing
I love
up
the
in that
language. I
environment.
love the culture. I went and lived, I studied in Mexico, and that's actually where I met my husband.
Oh, really?
We met in language school. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah,
Very cool.
I do.
So bringing it back to modern era, after Perryland and Cattle, what was your next article? I don't recall.
So it would have been Alex Stratta.
You also
on the spot.
did
Go
a
through
chef
this
chat
one.
with Jeremy Pacheco as well,
I
right?
did, yeah.
But
You
those
and I
wouldn't have
did
been
that.
the same issue.
May have been. I know. I think we have to go back and think about this.
I found a little trick, and this is great for the listeners as well. If you go to atasteofaz.com and you search your name,
That's right.
It'll pull up all the articles that you've done. So
That's awesome.
if Barcoa, our host, thank you, Barcoa, had better internet reception, I'd be able to pull it up now.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
kidding. No, shout out to David Tida,
Yes,
for
David
letting
Tida,
us
he's
set
great.
up here.
Which is another, the reason we chose Barcoa is another one of your articles.
There you go. Yeah.
One that you photographed as well. Tell us a little bit about this spot and why you kind of pitched that idea as an article.
I came here on a media event, and when I walked in, I just was like, wow, Phoenix doesn't have, I mean, until now, Phoenix didn't have anything like this. And this is really, this is the real deal, what they've done here. And it's, I mean, you guys walked in and y'all were in awe, and
sure.
every detail is so beautifully done. And on top of that, the drinks are phenomenal.
Yep.
And I love learning about agave spirits. And
Which is all they do here besides
they do.
Mexican beer.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, agave spirits. And you can come and you can take a class on agave spirits. And if you guys look at their Instagram, they have a lot of fun here.
Yeah.
They don't serve food, but they have food trucks and DJs that come in. And so there's so many nights that I'm sitting there flipping through Instagram, and I'm like, man, I wish I were at Barcoa tonight. Because like they've got this DJ, they have people dancing, they have, they're serving birria outside. It's just, it looks amazing. So.
Yeah.
Well, and you said it in your article. When you come down to this basement, you feel like you could very well be in Mexico. It's pretty
100%.
incredible.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so jumping back into it, we took a little quick break to peek at some of your stories that we did
Yes.
because I was forgetting them
I
so
was too.
elegantly.
We all have short-term memory loss.
Well, when we look back at them, we're like, oh, how do we even forget these?
Yeah.
Because they're
Yeah.
so incredible.
Yeah.
So you pulled up a few. Is there anyone that comes to mind that you want to just speak to how cool of a place it is?
Well, they're all very cool. They're all. That's why I wrote about them. Have to definitely give a shout out to Air Guitar. That was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Go. Chris and Alyssa. That was really fun podcast too. You remember that?
Yeah, that was a great
I missed
podcast.
that one. Yeah.
We did it
Yeah.
outside. It was pretty beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a really cool spot because I'll let you speak about it a little bit more. But my note would be is that it has everything that like a grocery store and a convenience store would have, but it's elevated to such a level that it almost feels like I think it's Epcot Studios where they have like the 50 like different sodas that you can try all of them. They don't have that exact thing,
Yeah.
but they have enough wine that you could get whatever you want. They have enough local beer. They have the cotton candy burrito.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if anybody knows Buc-ee's out there, it's kind of like the antithesis of Buc-ee's in that I say it that way jokingly, in that it has a lot of choices, but like whereas Buc-ee's has the 50, or actually I think they have 75 choices of soda. Air Guitar has a lot of choices, but they also have healthy choices. Mm-hmm. And so that's what Chris DeMarco, one of the owners, was saying. She said, she found herself driving to California, and whenever they would stop, she's like, I just wanted to get a kombucha, or I wanted to get, a bag of Siete chips. And there was no place where you could do that.
No.
And there they offer all of that. Plus they have a beautiful coffee bar. They have an ice cream bar. Do you remember the burrito? It was cotton candy burrito.
Yes.
With they had cotton candy, and then they put the ice cream in it, and they made a burrito out of it.
And I
Really?
think they
Pretty
wrap
incredible.
it with
That is interesting.
With cotton
they
candy.
wrap it with the cotton candy.
Yeah.
And it's got the ice cream and sprinkles and stuff in the middle.
Really?
It's wild.
That sounds really
And
interesting.
plus their selections of spirits is incredible, and wine, and they have flowers. They highlight a lot of local
Yes.
businesses. So flowers from Camel Shop Flower Shop. They have meals to go. When we shot, it was M Catering, and I think they've
Yep.
changed.
Okay.
So I should probably go edit that. I believe they've changed that.
We
You
can
have
update
4,000
that.
issues you got to go track down.
Yeah. Yes.
Wait.
But they still like an intense focus on local businesses that they support.
Yeah.
And, they had a lot of local beer. Remember the local kombucha?
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Well, and just such cool people.
Yeah.
Like Chris DeMarco with her, whatever you want to call it, lineage or pedigree of founding Postino. And what's the restaurant
Alyssa
group?
Sykes. Oh, the restaurant group?
Yes.
Postino?
Yes.
Oh.
I forget the name, but they did a ton of stuff.
Yes.
Alyssa, with her background in more convenience store, like a typical side of things as well. It's really cool what they've done because it has like that kind of like Disneyland vibe where you're walking down the aisles and you're like, holy shit, there's so much cool stuff.
There's
I
so
can
much
get
cool
here.
stuff in here, yeah.
You could literally just go there and walk around and have fun. And right next to it is the Epicenter that just popped up with like Beer Barn. I believe is
Belly.
Undertow one of the new ones that's going in there.
Undertow's
as well.
going in there, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
lots
it
of
opened
cool
yet?
stuff. I think
Some
Beer
place-
Barn is
Beer
open.
Yeah.
Barn's open,
Beer
yeah.
Barn. Okay, so Eric Guitar's
Belly.
out in Mesa. Is it Higley? And
It's Gilbert, I thought.
I'm sorry, yes.
Gilbert.
Gilbert.
Yeah. I don't remember the crossroads.
Higley.
It's by Agritopia, right?
Yep,
Yes.
right by
Uh-huh.
Agrotopia.
Yeah. So do you know if they plan on expanding, like making multiple, like, because that's something that would
I think
do well.
I think ideally,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
I hope
Yes,
so.
yeah.
Because I could use one by me for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, they
We all
do
could.
pizza by the slice. Yeah, I keep thinking of things that we focused on. There's so much. You just have to read my article.
Yeah, for sure.
And listen to the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Go check out that episode. I can't remember the number right now, but just type it in on our website, Air Guitar, and the article and podcast will pop up. One of your other articles that I really, really loved was the Wrigley Mansion article.
Right.
That is just such a historic place, and they're not to make it sound like it was easy to write an article, but the story kind of writes itself. You almost just have to pick what you want to include.
Yeah. Well, and again, that was another one where I was very nervous because I interviewed Jamie Hormel, and she's such a cool lady.
Yeah, she is
And
she's super cool.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to represent that, and I want to represent everybody well, but I was just particularly nervous
Sure.
with Jamie, and just her history, and she has such beautiful taste and has done so much for Phoenix, and it's very cool. It's such a cool spot. Like if y'all haven't been to Wrigley Mansion, you've got to get out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have yet to dine at Christopher's, but we did a podcast with Jamie and Christopher, and everyone asked, that's so cool. How did you get them to join you? And was Christopher well behaved? And I was like, honestly, we just kind of asked them, and they were down for it. And I think
He's lovely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think a large part of that is it must have been kind of their interactions with you leading into it,
Sure,
because
yeah.
we weren't really anyone special or in particular, and they were
Yeah.
like, yeah, we'll totally give you time, even though
Yeah.
that was maybe our third or fourth issue. I think it must have been our fourth issue.
Okay.
It was last summer because I remember
Okay, so it was
touring
our
it in the
third.
summer. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
We did go in the summer. I remember sweating a
Profusely.
whole lot. Yeah.
Yeah, she has so many wonderful plans for the mansion. She had said that her husband, who passed away, Jordy Hormel, loved to entertain people there, and so she's bringing back so many fun ideas. Like the other night, I went to they had a magic show there, magic and illusion show. So they are having a few of those. They have jazz nights. They have
That's right.
brunches. It's a special spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think Jamie's daughter even sings for the jazz nights
Oh,
sometime.
really?
Yeah,
Nice.
and
That's
Jordy,
awesome.
of course, had a music background as well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just walking around that property, and the food is, of course, incredible. It's just such a unique experience, and you don't really feel like you're in Arizona when you hit the crest of that mountain. You feel like you're kind of in California at that point,
Yeah.
because there's not many properties like that in Arizona,
Yeah.
especially
True.
that are publicly available to visit.
You
Yes.
can't really, I would say, you can't really go back there as a guest, but we got to go back into the kitchen. Incredible. Like, that was the
that
most
kitchen
incredible kitchen I've
amazing?
ever seen.
It's
like,
wild.
not only huge,
Yeah.
but like beautifully designed too. Like,
Yes.
it looked beautiful. And
It looks
was-
like it's never been cooked in.
No.
It's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah. That was impressive. That was very impressive.
And
Yeah.
it's got stoves that are probably like $100,000 a piece because they're like bright blue with
Yeah.
gold knobs. They're probably hand carved and all that stuff.
It's so
That's
clean
insane.
you can eat off the floor.
Yeah, I would,
I would.
especially
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, for sure.
And their wine room.
Oh yeah,
Yes. Do you remember the wine room?
Oh, we did go into the wine, right?
like the
Incredible.
cellar.
The cellar.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
uh-huh.
Yeah, and they had a bunch of like, scotch and stuff in there as well.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And that was before I had started venturing in, and I remember you saw something on the wall, and you're like, "Holy shit! Like they've got some good stuff here."
Yeah.
Which, if
legit.
they're gonna have it anywhere, you would imagine it would be at the Wrigley
It's
Mansion.
Wrigley Mansion for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you ever dined at the modern day Christopher's?
I have. Yes.
Okay, how was that?
It's just such a treat. It's beautiful. It's a surprise at every turn.
Seems like it would be hard to put into words because it's like, what do you even relate that to?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember when we shot photos there for your article, they brought out what I assumed was a chicken, and they're like, oh, yeah, go ahead and eat it. And I'm like, this is awesome. Of course I'm not going to turn this down. And then I'm leaving. He's like, oh, how was the guinea hen? And I'm like, I don't even know what a guinea hen is. I got in my car and looked it up, and I'm like, holy shit, that is a beautiful bird that I just ate. But yeah, the view there, it's quite incredible. Such an epic spot, and I hope we get a chance to dine there at some point as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Have to save up over the next few years. But
absolutely. Yeah.
That's true. One last note, Mark Tarbell had told me, and this was kind of my impetus for asking, for pitching you the story, is he was saying what a gift that Jamie and Christopher have given Arizona with their talents and with the Wrigley Mansion and everything they're doing there. It is a gift.
Yeah.
Well, and it's crazy to think that Christopher's wasn't there before, and they just built it on the side of this mountain.
Yeah.
And it's stunning. It's one of the
really
coolest
is.
restaurants I've ever been in. You go into the bathroom, and the bathroom has a floor-to-ceiling glass window that literally anyone can look in on you using the restroom. It's the weirdest but the coolest thing I've ever
Funny.
seen. So following that,
There was Perception as well.
Yes. That was a very unique spot.
It was, yeah.
Would you talk a little bit about kind of why you came up with that pitch and how the article evolved?
Sure. So I don't recall how many years ago, but I first met them at the Uptown Farmers Market. Mm-hmm. And they were just so cool, you know.
They were cooking out of like a military truck, right?
Now I have to remember all this. They had we might have to take a break and check and look that up.
It's sitting out front of their restaurant, at least when we went in last, right? Yeah. I don't know if it's a truck or a trailer or what.
It's a trailer. And I want to say it is like a World War II era
I think
trailer.
that's right.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it looks like an antique, just sitting in the middle of their patio. At least that's where it was then. Yeah. And I remember you saying that you had tried their stuff at the farmer's market, and it was fantastic.
Incredible, yeah.
I can't remember who else recently mentioned their name, but they were kind of like an industry-beloved place that, being that they were at farmers markets, hadn't quite broken through and made a huge name with the brick and mortar and whatnot. But then through COVID, it evolved into their brick and mortar, I believe.
Right before they opened.
That's right. Okay,
they opened like 6 months before COVID hit.
Ooh.
And they had to switch to basically all takeout, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And their food is done on a very high level. It's not
takeout food.
Not typically, no.
Yeah. No, I remember, and I think this is one of the opening line of my article, but they said that if they don't make it, they don't sell it, pretty much. So like everything there has been processed by them, has been made by them. They buy locally. They do whatever they can locally.
That's awesome.
Like everything on their menu.
Everything,
Yeah. Wow.
with a few minor exceptions, but everything. I mean, they have a beautiful charcuterie platter, for instance, that they cure themselves.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
They use probably 20 different farms for like all of their different produce. They get chicken locally. Their beef is local. And like one of the things I shot was Korean fried chicken, but I think it uses the necks and backs. So like sustainable cooking in terms of like using all parts of whatever product that you're working on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember we were shooting a cocktail, and I don't remember exactly how it popped up, but he was saying like for that cocktail, the juice itself was more expensive than the alcohol.
Really?
Just because they use such fresh stuff, hand squeezing it every day. And I don't remember exactly what the juice was. But just a very, very cool spot. And the inside is really, really pretty as well. It's got high ceilings, and we shot photographs on like a copper-covered table. If I recall correctly, there were some booths constructed out of like, I don't know if it was like a live edge wood or exactly how you would describe it. Giant table running down the middle that was just some massive tree.
Where is it? It's
on Central, like right across from Brophy.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool spot for sure.
Yeah.
Is there any dish or component of that story that really stands out to you when you look back at it?
Do you remember how beautiful that salad?
I do remember.
Yeah, such a beautiful salad.
It had
it
like
was like a
symmetry
citrus.
to it.
Yeah, it was like an Arizona citrus salad.
Ooh,
It looked like a flower to me
It
when
did.
they brought it out. I was
It
like,
looked like
this is crazy.
like a peony. It was beautiful.
What's
It
that?
was.
Yeah.
What's a
A
peony?
peony is a flower with many petals.
Okay.
And they
Is a
bloom
chrysanthemum
usually.
a peony?
I don't know enough about flowers.
I
But
don't
I-
either.
But I know that they you used to only get them like around June or July,
Okay.
and you see them a lot in Asian art.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You are a worldly person. You are-
But I can't
When
tell
she
you
said
exactly what a
peony, I'm
peony.
like,
yeah,
I'm
I
not
can't
even
tell
gonna
you what
try
a
on
peony
that
is.
as soon as I asked, I'm like, I knew I shouldn't ask
No.
because she's going to have to explain 7 other things for me to understand. Yeah.
That's why I love hanging out with Marci and having her write and whatnot, is because she brings that worldly component.
Yeah.
And when you join us for podcasts, specifically with people that have kind of that worldly influence, like Alex Stratta was a perfect example, it brings so much more context that I just am not going to have because I'm not as worldly as you, Marci.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said in 20 years you will be. Remember when I said
hope
that?
so.
You're
I hope so. I am well traveled in Arizona at the moment, but I haven't left the state in I don't even know how long. Too much
Gotta
to
get
do
you
in
out,
Arizona
man.
these days.
I know there
Yeah.
is. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah, you went to San Diego recently and visited their craft beer scene.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
must have been pretty epic.
That was pretty badass. Yeah, that was really cool.
Bringing it.
Yeah,
what were you gonna
sorry,
say?
no, I could go on a whole tangent with that. So
Yeah,
let's
sure.
bring it back to Marci. Yeah.
So I don't know if it was before or when exactly it landed, but it actually was the last issue, the Proof Bread article. One of my favorites as well. An
was so
incredible
cool.
spot.
Yeah.
I think that was one I mentioned to you to have you do the story. Is that correct?
You did, yes.
And so now that I remember it, since we started the first issue, they had kind of been on my radar as, just a cool spot doing cool things.
Yeah.
And they had so much evolution over the period of COVID because they were operating out of their garage at their home and hit a scale that they needed more space, basically.
No, they're neighbors. They're neighbors.
Well, yeah, they were
Kicked
like,
them out.
Oh, really?
they were doing deliveries and stuff
Yeah.
in their home, and
Yeah.
their neighbor was upset that the people that were working there were parking on the street or something
Sure.
like that. And so the city kicked them out of their garage, and they had to find a new spot like right away.
Yeah.
After they had
And-
retrofit their entire home around their business.
Yeah.
Just added a new like addition and all
Yeah.
this crazy stuff.
Did they get it approved?
Pardon?
Did they get it approved? I'm just
I think they were
I
operating
don't-
under a certain license
Right.
that allowed you to be
To
a
do
home
that.
baker.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So it was
Yes.
So they were
because
following
people-
the rules.
They were
and-
following the rules, yeah, but the neighbors just didn't like it.
I think the rule that they broke was the parking situation. I think you
Sure.
couldn't
Oh,
have
right.
other people parking.
Well, once
on
you get
the
to a
street.
certain level and people want your shit, man, they don't care.
Freaking haters, man.
Yeah.
Haters. And John is just an incredibly intelligent guy, and I'm sure his wife is as well. I haven't really talked with her as much, but
Yeah.
After the podcast that we did, I think you had to run, and I was just talking to him about all sorts of things. He has mulberries growing in his front yard.
Yeah.
His
Nice.
neighbor has chickens, and they trade stuff, and I'm like, man, I told him, I was like, if Armageddon happens, I'm coming here because
Yeah.
you've got bread, mulberries, and eggs likely. So
I know. And what's interesting is when I tell people about that interview, and then afterwards I went to their brick and mortar in downtown Mesa, and it's a beautiful building.
it is.
And when I tell them how pretty the building is, that everyone always says, "Oh, but have you seen their original? Have you seen the original operation they had in the home?" And I said, "Yes." Well, that's where we interviewed them, and so it's just interesting, like the number of people in the industry who come back to that and recall like how cool it is that they created that business the way they did.
Well, and they bought Proof Bread. I forget the gentleman's name.
Jared.
Jared, yes.
Uh-huh.
He was operating at farmers markets, and they bought the business from him and didn't really know what exactly they were getting into. And, baking is one of the most difficult things. I always say farmers, people who work in food and beverage, and bakers are some of the hardest working people
Sure.
you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
The hours of bakers and farmers is something else. So if you're eating bread, especially from a local cafe or bakery or whatever, give them a pat on the back or leave them a tip or something, because they were probably up at 3 a.m. preparing
sure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with proof
yeah.
bread, it takes 30 days to ferment, or 29 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And like you were saying, if you go back to their old operation, there's one tiny little oven. Their new one, it is probably the biggest oven I've ever seen. It slides out 10 feet. I think you can fit
wow.
20 loaves of bread per rack.
That's really cool.
It's pretty wild.
That's neat.
So what was the other one that you did last issue?
I did proof, and we just looked this up. Why can't
I
I
know.
remember? Yeah.
When the lights are on and the camera's rolling.
Yeah.
sure.
My mind goes blank. No, I know this.
Queen Creek Olive Mill? Was
Yeah.
that?
That
Queen
was
Creek
the
Olive
time
Mill.
before
Yes.
last. Yeah. It was the time before last.
Which is a great spot too. Like that's we
Yeah,
gotta get
if
them on
you
the show.
can tell, whenever I have like a
Barcoa.
really...
Barcoa.
Yeah, that's right.
so
Okay.
We already talked about it.
Whenever there's a spot that you really need to dig deep on and kind of like there's so many different components to bring together, I love bringing those to you because you have that very like good storytelling approach that you get the details and the story kind of builds itself instead of just putting it all out in front of people and they kind of
Yeah.
have to make the story themselves. If that makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it does. But what's interesting too is because Queen Creek Olive Mill has been around for some time, and they've been written about a lot. So
Sure.
I really wanted to try to get a different angle from them, you know.
I like
And
that.
sometimes you go into an interview and they'll tell you, you know, kind of the same things that you've already read. So you have to like listen and then try to find a little angle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a spot too that even despite how much it's been written about, people still don't realize that it exists.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, I don't necessarily have an issue on the publisher side of things, publishing stories that maybe are similar to other people, because, you know, I think we definitely have a different audience just by way of building our own audience from scratch. But also, like putting it in your hands, I knew that you were going to go to a level of depth that people who care about technical stuff and things like that are going to care about, but also people who just want to find out about cool local products, like basically everything they have on their shelves was going to appreciate it as well.
For sure. Yeah.
And when we went out there and did the tour, that was incredible as
Yeah,
well.
I love the tour.
We met Perry Rea, founder and owner, along with his wife, who now operates like a olive oil based spa out of the location
Wow,
itself.
dang.
Yep. And then John, the son of Perry, I don't think you were with me for that part of the tour. I think you were interviewing, but he brought us
Yeah.
over to a new olive orchard that they have, and it's cool, man. Seeing all that stuff there and
Yeah.
seeing the olives forming on the trees and knowing that you're 30 minutes outside of Phoenix where chefs are using that stuff, it's pretty sweet.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And they have their upcoming Garlic Fest too, I believe, right?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Everything's on their website too. So I need to get on that website and check out some of these events because that Garlic Fest looks amazing. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas for next issue or future issues?
Oh, yes, I do. I have
Not
a
that you
couple
want
of
to
them.
divulge on the air, though.
Yes, I know. I need to pitch you actually when we finish with this.
Okay.
But yeah, there's just endless stories I think
Sure.
out there. But I think that I think it's interesting to kind of focus on the smaller guys.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Agree.
I'm going to try to find some more like small, interesting stories that people may have never even heard about or never even thought about. There's a little town in Arizona I texted you about. It's called Young, Arizona.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's some people out there doing some interesting things, growing wine.
Where is it exactly?
So I haven't been. My husband came back from a hiking trip and told me, he's like, you absolutely have to go. And I believe it's kind of northeast of here. So
Okay.
I don't know if it's quite on the Mogollon Rim or just below it,
Hmm.
but it is at a higher elevation. So it's definitely at an elevation where they can grow, vines
Sure.
for wine.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy how diverse Arizona is. Like you go 50 miles in any direction, maybe not so much when you're in the valley, but you go, call it 100 miles north of the valley and then 100 miles north of that. It's totally, totally different.
It
and
is,
not
yeah.
only just in terms of the geography and whatnot, but what people are doing because of that in terms of agriculture and cooking and foraging and things like that. Brett Vibber is a great example. You go, I don't know how many miles north it is. We'll call it 100. Maybe
Yeah.
it's 90. The stuff he's foraging for up there, I think he posted a picture the other day of pulling like $2,000 of mushrooms
Really?
out of the ground.
Wow,
yeah, which is
dang.
crazy.
Yeah.
So, Marci, before we ask you, another question or two and send you off, where can people find you on Instagram, online, things like that?
My Instagram handle is a taste. You're a taste of AZ. I am Texas Taste. Texaz
Right.
Taste.
I appreciate the plug
Texas
for us
Taste.
as well.
Yeah, there you go. So you can find me, my Instagram handle, Texas Taste, and also my blog is texastaste.com.
Nice.
And you're posting everything. I think you do recipes on there. You
I
kind of
some
do recaps of travel.
Travel. I do recipes, travel. Because it started out really as a travel blog.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been writing it now for about 11 years.
Nice.
So it's kind of, it's evolved.
Sure.
And for instance, during COVID, I wrote a lot of recipes and that's kind of what you did during COVID, right?
Yeah.
So people really liked it. So I've kind of kept with that. So I try to do like one recipe, one travel, one locally focused article a month. So that's kind of the, that's kind of.
Well, and it's not
what
just
I'm
like,
looking at.
you went to dinner and wrote a little bit. You've done several articles on there that I'm a little bit jealous you didn't send our way to put in the magazine or on our website. Kidding, of course.
Oh, no. They can always come your way.
So I guess the last questions I'm going to ask you before we let you go, is there somewhere that you are just waiting excitedly to go to get a bite of food or a drink as well?
Locally or
Locally, yes. Or we can even do on a national level, global level.
No, I think it's best, for Taste of AZ to stay local.
We'll take any recommendations we can get.
Ones that you haven't heard of yet? You've
Let's
probably
do-
heard of everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
probably.
I think
I'm
if
pretty
we,
smart. Joking.
I think, so I recently went to Sotis, which is what I'd been waiting to do. So we had a drink at Chula, I think that's KHLA. Y'all had a podcast there.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce
no,
it?
it's, you're talking about the one by Tika, right?
No, behind Lam Wang.
Yeah, so you did one with Lam Wang.
Lam Wang, yeah.
Okay.
I think
Yep.
Tika's part of that. Tika Cheng.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So we had a drink there, and then we walked across the street.
How
and
was
I
that
have
place?
eaten. Sotis was wonderful, and so is Lam Wang. They're wonderful.
How was Kala?
Kala's fabulous. And I'm really interested. Going to do a piece on Espiritu. Yeah, in Mesa.
We're going to have to bleep that part
I
out.
know. Oh yeah. Are you?
No, I'm joking.
Okay.
I'm joking.
Sorry. But that's one that I'm really looking forward to.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Because
they're out in
everyone's
Mesa.
freaking out about Bacanora, and I've heard only amazing things.
So this is
but
Renee's
that's-
brother, Roberto.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is he involved in it as well or no?
I'm not sure the extent. I
Okay.
don't know. I don't know.
Either way, I'm looking forward to you digging into the story, and I can
Yeah.
just show up, take some photos, or have you take the photos, and I'll just show up and eat the food.
I'll
There
be
you
there
go.
to eat as well. So.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm
We'll
excited
be
about that.
quote unquote supervisors.
Supervising, yeah.
So-
Make sure all the food gets eaten.
Yeah, and I've never been. Is it the Reserve behind
Cafe Monarch.
Monarch? Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never been there, so I'm kind of itching to do that. And in fact, like I've been to Christopher's, Binkley's. The Reserve is kind of one I want to check off my list so that I can kind of compare and contrast all the like high-end prefix dinners in town, and kind of because they're all so different, and it really
Sure.
depends on what you want.
Have you
for
been
that different
to
occasion.
Quiescence at the
Haven't
farm?
done that yet. I've done Kai, which is out at the what is the on I-10 on the way to Tucson, Wild Horse Pass.
Okay,
Oh,
Sometimes
yeah.
I have to describe it before the word comes out. It's in the Sheridan at Wild Horse Pass.
I don't know what is that?
Kai is an upscale restaurant, and they have a prefix dinner, and I would go so far as to say they were like one of the first like high-end places to kind of focus on local,
Okay.
not just local, but like what they consider indigenous
Okay.
indigenous
and
ingredients.
stuff. Okay.
Yeah,
Nice. Okay.
And this is at
I believe it's a Sheridan.
okay.
Yeah.
Wild Horse Pass.
At Wild Horse Pass
At Wild
Casino.
Horse Pass,
Okay.
yeah.
I think you would really like Quiescence at the farm. I've not
Yeah,
dined there, but I took photos there for a
Yeah.
previous article. And
I need
Pat
to try that
Christofalo
place.
is the mom who is the matriarch, if I can say that, describing it correctly. And then her son, Dustin, is just doing crazy stuff as well. And they're like farm board, I think they call it. It wasn't like a cheese board, but I think it had some cheeses and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it had like pâtés and other things, French words that I'm not even going to try and recall right now. And it was just incredible. And a lot of it they grow on the property and done with like that farm to table style that's just really, really fresh and delicious. That's one of my favorite spots, and the property is beautiful as well.
It's been on my list for a while.
Maybe we can all go sometime.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Anytime food is involved, just count me in on it.
Okay, automatic.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Eric has punched that ticket. Alrighty. Well, Marci, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to let people know?
Not at the moment, but thank you very much for this
you for
opportunity.
joining. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We know
we threw her out on her at the last minute. She didn't realize we were interviewing her.
No, yeah. I thought we were interviewing Dave.
No.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, there's just 3?
I said there's only 3 microphones. What are we doing here?
Oh, we're
And we
interviewing
locked
you,
this
Marci.
gate behind you. You're like, yes, we finally got you.
No, you did great. You did great.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you
did.
for all that you do, honestly.
Thanks. Well, thank you guys. Y'all
Yeah.
y'all took a gamble on me, so thank you.
Thank you for
I think
making
the
the
odds were in
gamble
our
pay off.
favor.
Yeah.
I think.
That was probably the least of the gambles that we took, I think. But
I'd say so.
yeah, what I'll let people go with is you have to go follow Marci right now because
Thank
she's
you.
always going to good spots, and not just
Thank
in
you.
Arizona. That's definitely a big focus of
Yeah,
it.
I'm
But I
definitely
love
all
seeing
over.
you travel around the country. I live vicariously, and I'm like, okay, I can't wait till the next stories because. You have a passion, and like we were saying before, you understand the context around these places, which leads to appreciating significance. And I kind of get some of that through the things that you're doing. Even if it's just, I forget the one place that you went to with the 50 plus soda taps.
Oh, Buc-ee's.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
damn, I
Buc-ee's.
need to go there sometime. That's
Buc-ee's.
gotta be
Oh
the
my
coolest.
gosh.
Well, Buc-ee's is so it's a gas station in Texas.
Okay.
It is.
And it has like 250 gas pumps. Like Megan and Chris, our friends live across the street. They're from Texas.
Yeah.
Every time they're by Buc-ee's, they bring my daughters back like Buc-ee's socks and
Oh, really?
like high quality stuff. Like it's not like just some random truck stop stuff. It's like, man, those are nice socks.
It's the craziest.
They have
thing
their
you've
own
seen.
barbecue there. They like it's
Really?
Yeah.
it's legit.
They have
yeah.
a jerky bar.
So if you can get us
Dippin'
in with
Dots
Buc-ee's,
bar.
I'm totally to do a taste of AZ travels to Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
Wow,
do it.
that's an idea.
Yeah, right. I'm
Because
in.
they haven't
This
come
part's
into
definitely
Arizona
getting
yet.
bleeped out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nobody's taking that
No,
idea.
Yeah.
that's our idea.
All right, sounds good.
Well, Marci, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
like I
thank
said,
you.
everyone,
Thanks.
follow Marci.
Thank you.
Follow her blog, get all the good recommendations, and
you.
keep an eye
Thank you,
out for
guys.
her on future episodes and in magazines. And one
I
more
was going to
thing.
add one thing. I was going to say this a minute ago, but with what the places you travel, the experiences you have, the way that you're able to tell stories, write it, and then on top of it, add photos. I think that's what adds a lot of depth for it. 'Cause
Absolutely.
your photos, just the written part of it is so good, and then you give people the visual aspect. So
Thank
nice
you.
work on that as well.
Thank you.
And you have like a, I don't want this to sound negative because to me it's a positive thing, but you have like a documentary-ish style, photo style, which really kind of captures things partially by using natural light and other things, but also you just do a good job of capturing vignettes of whatever place. Like when we came down and where we're sitting now, in your article, you can see a photo of this area, and it, I guess you would expect it to look just like it did in the photo, but I feel like I've been here before, I guess
Yeah.
you could say.
Thank
For sure.
you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, with that said, once again, thank you for joining us, and cheers, everybody.
Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks, Marci.